Hello, my name is Wyatt Aycock, and this will be my Art Week's assignment for English 112. My chosen art piece that I chose for this assignment is titled A Wooded Landscape by Mindert Lubberts. He also went by a last name of Habema, which was his preferred last name for most of his life. It was said by some sources, I will not quote them, however, it was said by some sources that Habima was his grandmother's last name. So that is, and she was a very large part of his life, and so that's why he took her name instead of his parents. Habima's early life, he was born in 1638, so nearly 4 centuries ago. He was raised in foster care and by his grandmother, like I said earlier. She had a very, very large influence on him until he was about 20. He started a mentorship when he was about 20 with a well-known landscape painter named Jacob von Ruysdael. Him and Jacob's uncle both had very large influential impacts on Habima and his art. And Habima's art often mirrored Jacob and Jacob's uncle's because they had such a influence on him when he was young. Most of Habima's paintings were painted during the 1660s because he got married shortly after, and his family quickly consumed his life. Here's some details on the painting that I chose for this assignment. It was painted in 1663, so he was about 25 years old. Like I said earlier, it reflected many tendencies of his early mentors. Online, I found a few more paintings that were fairly similar, labeled the same name, A Wooded Landscape. However, none of them were actually on any notable websites, like the National Gallery of Art, like you see here. This is the only painting on this website that I could find with the name A Wooded Landscape. And as you can see, it was painted 1663. But yes, there were other paintings. However, I did choose this one because it was the only one labeled correctly on most websites, and it also mirrored where I grew up. I thought that it was very similar in ways, like the dirt path and the bodies of water, the ponds, the little cottage in the background, the hills, the slight hills, this dike wall here, the fields, and the trees. I thought it was very, very reminiscent of where I grew up, so that's one reason why I chose this painting. Most of his paintings, especially this one, were extremely detailed. They reflected many different traits of his early mentors' paintings, and one of these details, or one of these tendencies, was that they were very detailed. He definitely Habima definitely carried that along during his tenure as an artist. I noticed in many of his paintings that there was a sort of community that was almost painted. It was, you could almost tell that every painting that he painted was almost of the same place, just a different view. So I took this as, he started he started most of his painting after he was 20, after he had his mentorship with Van Ruysdael and his uncle. So I took that as, oh, well, he has found a community that he lives in now that is much, much different than the foster homes and his grandmother's home that he lived in his early life. So that's kind of how I took that. And you can see here in the picture, there's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can count 7 people in this painting, all in one area, and they're all doing different things. We have one walking down the path. We have one family of 3 stopped. They seem to be talking, exchanging thoughts. We have one sitting by the pond, potentially fishing, and we have one walking down this very narrow dirt road near a field, all doing different things, and it seems to me like they're all part of the same community. This painting, like all of his other paintings, were incredibly realistic and carried a lot of realistic traits to them. And it really labeled him as a top painter of the Golden Age, 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. Hobbema's personal life: he was married at 30 in 1668 to Eeltine Vink. He eventually had 5 kids and stopped most of his painting after getting married and growing his family to a total of 7. He eventually outlived his wife and every last one of his kids. And he lived to 71 years old. He passed in 1709. Hobbema's history and legacy. There are actually no written records of him in 17th century literature as an artist. So pretty much all of the documentation that has been written about Hobbema was 18th century or later, after he was pretty much past and gone. There is some notes from his mentors, noting his, obviously noting his existence, and obviously he's got all of his 500 plus paintings. Most of them were not very famous at all, but he did have a few that were very noteworthy. He is still regarded as a top landscape artist, and especially from the golden age of art, which was, a span of about a century, in the 16th and 17th centuries, alongside artists like Rembrandt. His most famous work from Hobbema was from 1689, and it was titled "The Avenue at Middleharness." It featured tall trees towering over cottages and a long dirt road. Here is a photo of it. I did not choose, even though this is his most famous painting, I did not choose it because it didn't speak to me near as much as a wooded landscape, just because, they're obviously a wooded landscape. It really mirrored my home and my setting as growing up, where this is extremely abstract with the extremely tall trees. You rarely see trees this tall in wide open space, because most trees that grow this tall and leaf out at the top, they're in a forest, so that they can get sunlight way up at the top. So it's just something you don't really see often. So I didn't choose that. However, Hobbema as an artist, he was not recognized near as much while he was alive, and but now he holds many of his paintings in museums like the National Gallery of Art, and other museums. But yes, this has been my Art Week's assignment presentation for English 112 for A Wooded Landscape by Mindert Loberts Habema. Thank you.